Welcome to the SEL PQA 101, where we're going to do an overview of the Social Emotional Learning Program Quality Assessment. My name is Jocelyn Weedo, and I'm the Network and Quality Coordinator with Sprockets, St. Paul's Out of School Time Network. And that darling picture is me the summer after second grade. It was my first week at day camp at the beginning horseback riding program. When my mom signed me up, it wasn't because she was looking for a social emotional learning program. I loved the idea of horses and being outdoors. And back then, youth programs didn't talk about social emotional learning the way that we do now. But when I think about SEL practices and reflected on that experience, I realized just how important that camp was to my social, emotional, and learning and development. So to kick us off, I want to share a few examples inspired by this picture. Socially, while this picture only shows me, it doesn't capture the relationships I built with other campers and staff. We played name games, participated in icebreakers, and tried lots of new experiences together during that week. Looking back, I also realized that working with horses taught me something unique about relationships. Caring for an animal requires trust, communication, respect and boundaries, and responsibility. Those are all social skills too. Emotionally, I probably should have been more concerned that I wasn't wearing a helmet. Thankfully, we know that safety standards have changed a lot since then. This picture was taken during a family night. I remember being excited for my mom to meet my horse and my counselor and all my friends. I was also nervous because we were going to be demonstrating what we had learned and I wanted to do well. Throughout my experiences at camp, I saw a range of emotions from other campers too. Someone might be excited to ride a horse until it was actually time to climb up into the saddle, and then the excitement quickly turned into fear. Others, including myself, became frustrated when my horse wasn't responding the way I wanted it to, or disappointed when the weather meant we couldn't ride. Those moments gave us opportunities to experience emotions and work through challenges. Learning is probably the easiest to see in this picture. I'm practicing one of the very first horseback riding skills they taught me, how to hold the reins. The instructor taught us to imagine we're holding an ice cream cone with the end of the reins being the ice cream coming out of the top. It's such a simple analogy, but it helped break down a new and simple skill into something memorable. Later, I learned how the horse responds to the pressure of the rein on their neck and how pulling back put pressure on their tongue with the bit in their mouth. Staff modeled these skills and gave us reminders as we practiced, and by the family night, we had an opportunity to present what we had learned. I went on through high school and early adult years to work at that camp, so I know that the camp wasn't using a formal SEL curriculum. Those experiences happened because caring adults intentionally created an environment where young people could build relationships, experience and manage emotions, develop new skills, and receive meaningful support as they learned. Supporting that intentionality is really what this tool is about. Even if your program doesn't use a specific SEL curriculum, social emotional learning can and should be embedded into the everyday experiences and interactions you create with young people. The SEL PQA gives us a framework for being intentional about those opportunities. It helps us recognize the strengths already in the program and identifies ways we can continue to build on them. With that in mind, let's get started. Here are the topics we're going to cover in this video. We're going to start with the background of the PQA tools. If you've already watched the YPQA 101 video, the background segment is the same, so you can click to the next segment to jump to the SEL PQA scales on the video or in the description. In the scales overview, we'll do an overview of the content in the tool. Next, we'll walk through a couple of examples of how to read the tool, and then we'll wrap up with next steps if you want to learn more and go deeper. Where did the program quality assessment come from? This timeline highlights Sprocket's connection with the Weikart Center for Youth Program Quality, the organization that developed the PQA. The Weikart Center itself has a much longer history, but this gives some context of how the tool evolved and why it's become such an important part of our work. In 2001, the Weikart Center developed the Youth Program Quality Assessment, the YPQA. This framework was based on practices that emerged from years of operating the high scope camp, which evolved into the Institute for Ideas, Initiative, Diversity, Expectations, Achievement, and Service. These programs, based in Michigan, became nationally recognized as exemplary non-school educational programs because they consistently created engaging, high-quality learning experiences for young people. Rather than simply documenting what they did, the Weikart Center studied which practices made the biggest difference for youth. Those best practices became the foundation for the professional development coaching, and ultimately the Youth Program Quality Assessment. In 2002, the YPQA entered a 3-year validation study to ensure the tool was both reliable and effective as a measure for program quality. Although Sprockets officially launched in 2011, several St. Paul organizations were already involved in this work through partnerships between the University of Minnesota and the Weikart Center. Local programs help shape how assessment and professional learning could be used together as part of a continuous improvement process. Over the years, Sprockets partners have valued the PQA because it provides a shared language for quality. Programs can use the tool to plan experiences using research-based best practices. Observe what's happening during programming, reflect on strengths and areas for growth, and guide professional development and coaching across the network. You'll also notice several other versions of the tool shown in green on the timeline. The school age PQA is very similar to the youth PQA with a few adaptations for school age settings. St. Paul programs have also participated in pilots for tools such as the Academic Skill Building PQA and the Summer Learning PQA. Most recently, back in about 2016, 2017, multiple partners helped pilot what is now the SEL PQA. Based on feedback from systems like ours, the Weikart Center refined the tool to focus on social emotional learning practices that mattered most while maintaining the continuous improvement process that programs were already familiar with. As we move through this overview, it's important to remember that the PQA is a tool. It's designed to support planning, observation, reflection, and continuous improvement. The research behind it gives us confidence that the practices included represent strong, evidence-informed approaches for supporting young people. At the same time, no single tool captures everything. Depending on your program's mission, culture, and goals, there may be additional best practices that are essential to your work but aren't explicitly measured by the PQA. And yes, the tool can feel overwhelming because it's a lot at first. That's one of the things I appreciate most about the Sprockets approach. Programs aren't expected to master everything overnight. Each team can build their practice over time, focusing on the areas that are most meaningful for their youth and staff. If your program is designed to help young people grow socially, emotionally, and as learners, the SEL PQA provides a strong framework to guide that work. And that is what we're going to focus on for this overview. So just to reiterate, and in no particular order, these are some of the reasons Sprockets has continued to support programs in utilizing the program quality assessments for years. It represents quality youth work development practices that work to support young people. The tool is a rubric that allows youth workers, whether in planning or in observation, to differentiate their practice and how they engage youth in meaningful ways. And whether at a program level or at a system level, it helps provide a shared language that allows youth workers to grow together and learn from each other. The process of using a PQA through observation is what makes the tool powerful. Not only does the person being observed benefit from the reflecting on their practices, the person observing also benefits from watching others do their work and identifying those practices in action. And finally, the flexibility of the tool. Programs can use it in planning and reflecting on the opportunities they want to provide, and even honing in on the priorities, which items are most important to them, and planning and observing those items in a focused way to intentionally improve those areas before moving on to prioritizing what makes sense for the next program year. Which is why this is a continuous program improvement cycle. The tool allows you to take a snapshot of your program, observing one session or many sessions over time. Then you use that data as a way to have a reflective conversation with staff. Conversation that helps you make meaning of those scores, what you celebrate, what is surprising, what sometimes challenges you to think more deeply about your program and what you want to prioritize for young people. Ultimately, creating annual goals, some low-hanging fruit that can improve with some quick adjustments, and some that may take more time to grow and develop. It is a continuous process that is low stakes. Here are two examples of how locally we talk about CPI, both at the St. Paul level and statewide. While the phrasing is a bit different, the concept is the same. It's about making incremental changes over time. If you are one of our St. Paul-based partners, reach out to learn more about how to get involved in our activator cycle. In the metro area or in the greater Minnesota, contact Ignite After School to learn more about the M3 cycle. So what exactly is the SEL PQA framework? If you have heard about the YPQA before, this image may look familiar. This is the SEL PQA. There are 4 domains represented by the 4 horizontal bars. The domain names are on the right. On the left, within each of those colors, represents the scales. These are the themes within each domain. And not shown here, but we will get to in a bit, are 41 items, anywhere between 3 to 6 items for each of those 10 scales. Again, similar to the Youth Program Quality Assessment. But there are some differences. We know that one of the differences that's notable is the size of the tools. I noted the SEL PQA has 10 scales in 41 items, and the YPQA had 18 scales and has 63 items. You'll notice in the column on the far right, it indicates which items were newly developed for the SEL PQA and which were carried over or adapted from existing tools, including the YPQA and the Academic Skill Builder PQA. Some items remained essentially the same, while others were revised to better align with social and emotional learning. Here's a few examples. Supporting youth interests doesn't include any new items. If you've used the YPQA before, you'll recognize similar language of the practices from the choice scale. Fostering teamwork includes many of the practices that were previously found in the collaboration scale of the YPQA. Emotion coaching and cultivating empathy are entirely new scales that were created specifically for the SEL PQA. Several of the other scales include a combination of familiar practices and newly developed items. If you're familiar with the YPQA, you may also notice that some scales, like reflection and belonging, aren't listed. They're not as standalone scales anymore. That doesn't mean those practices disappeared. In fact, many of the powerful reflection strategies, like asking open-ended questions that help young people make connections, explaining their thinking, and applying what they're learning, are woven throughout the SELPQA. Rather than being treated as a specific activity at the end of a lesson or a project, reflection happens and is integrated into interactions before, during, and after learning experiences. The same is true for belonging. Instead of being concentrated in one place, practices that help young people feel included, valued, and connected are embedded across multiple scales throughout the tool. This can feel like a lot to take in all at once, so let's break it down one domain at a time. As we move through the 4 domains, you will see them laid out like this. On the left is a more in-depth description. I encourage you to pause and read. These are from the reference guide or the handbook that you get as part of the self-assessment training. On the right, you will see the scales and items. These will look a lot different as we move into the other domains because this domain only has one scale. The last piece you will notice are the items. These are the individual practices that are included as the rubric portion of the tool with the suggested best practices. This session is just an overview, so if you want to learn more about the rubric and how each of the items are measured, I encourage you to go to the website listed here. Or if you are in our Sprockets network, reach out for our next training opportunity. So here we see the domain creating safe spaces. Named similarly is the scale safe space. There are 6 items within the safe space scale: fostering positive emotional climate, conveying warmth and respect, providing support for safe space, demonstrating positive group management styles, demonstrating mutual accountability, and showing active inclusion. While we often feel as staff we're creating a safe space for young people, these items really focus on what staff can do intentionally, consistently, actively, from day one and over time. Having conversations about what we do to create safe spaces and having observations to see if we're actually doing actions daily that reinforce those safe spaces is important so that we hold ourselves accountable for creating that space young people deserve and not unintentionally assuming that these things continue to happen over time. In supportive environment, we focus on emotion coaching, scaffolding learning, and fostering a growth mindset. I mentioned previously, emotion coaching is a brand new scale for this tool, focused on what staff can do to help support young people in validating and labeling emotions and growing a vocabulary of a wide range of emotions as well as intensity of emotions. It's about discussing strategies for responding to situations that bring up or lead to big emotions, and viewing emotions as opportunities for reflection and building skills for young people to better understand themselves and how to recognize and hopefully regulate for themselves. Go ahead and pause for a moment to read the overview of this domain, the scales, and the items that are listed here. In interactive environment, we focus on cultivating empathy, promoting responsibility and leadership, and fostering teamwork. One thing I want to point out here, and you'll see it in other aspects of the tool, is the focus on the words provide and structure. This is where you can see how the tool really supports intentional planning of activities that connect to specific practices. While some things do happen organically, deliberate and intentional program planning increases the likelihood that young people will have the quality experience components. Go ahead and pause for a moment to read the overview of this domain and the scale and items listed here. Finally, engaging environment, which includes the scales furthering learning, supporting youth interests, and supporting plans and goals. Engagement sits at the top of the pyramid because these practices create opportunities for young people to actively think and explore, build the critical thinking skills that we want to help them develop. Take supporting plans and goals as an example. Setting goals and creating a plan to achieve them is a lifelong skill that applies in school, work, relationships, and everyday life. Young people don't just develop these skills by simply being told how, they develop them by having opportunities to practice. Those opportunities can be as simple as setting up a goal for the day or an activity and then breaking down or planning the steps to complete the goal, deciding how to approach a challenge, or reflecting on what they like to improve next time. They can also happen through larger projects where youth set long term goals and monitor their progress over time. The key is being intentional about creating opportunities for young people to think, make decisions, solve problems, and practice these skills throughout your program. Go ahead and pause for a moment to read the overview of this domain and the scales and items listed here. In this section, we're going to walk through how to read the tool. Opening the tool for the first time can seem overwhelming because it is pages of text laid out in a grid. First, let's break down how the information is laid out. I mentioned before that there are multiple forms. In the front of each tool, it will lay out which form that tool is that you are using. Earlier, when we looked at the pyramid image, I mentioned that there were 4 domains. Each page will have this line across the top and tell you which domain that page is from. Then there is the scale. The scale is noted both at the top of the page along with the domain and as a header, so you know that all of the information on that page is regarding that scale. In this example, we see that we are in the supportive environment domain and the emotion coaching scale. Each scale has anywhere from 3 to 6 items. Each item extends across the row and includes a brief description on whether the indicator is a 1, a 3, or a 5. Note there are no 2s or 4s in the scoring process. It's always a 1, 3, or 5, with descriptions on what that might look like. Then there's anecdotal evidence. So anecdotal evidence comes from the notes an observer will take during an observation. They're writing down quotes of things they hear or things that they see. Here, the observer wrote down things that they heard during their basketball clinic. As youth moved through the basketball skills station, staff are heard saying, "Oh, I understand that's frustrating that you're not making that shot. You look so happy that you beat your previous record. Are you proud of yourself? You seem frustrated that you keep losing the ball." These were statements that the observer heard that directly connected to acknowledging or validating emotions. And so this would be considered a 5 as evidence supporting that emotion coaching. So now that you know how the form is kind of laid out, we're going to walk through an example of how you would read the tool. Just a reminder, there is a really in-depth training that helps folks really dig into the tool and practice with it with other people. We're going to briefly show just how it breaks down a little bit so that you can think about how to use this for your program. Now, when you open it up, this full page, again, there's multiple items. It's a lot of text that's on the page, and so it can be overwhelming. So we're going to break that down. Earlier, I mentioned each of the different items within the scale. So under fostering teamwork, which is the scale, the items are promoting active collaboration, establishing shared goals, and opportunities to process. So when we look at that first item, we're going to focus on the 3 and the 5 because as we're planning, we're going to want to try our goal to be, 3 and a 5 if these are things that are important to our program. So you'll notice in the underlined portions that for a 5, it requires active collaboration. So there's some kind of small group or something that the young people require active collaboration. A 3 would be that, yes, they're participating in groups, but they don't require active collaboration. You'll notice that within parentheses, they provide some examples of what that could be. Again, this is a tool that doesn't necessarily represent specifically the context of your program. So this would be a great place to start with your staff and talk about what does that mean for us? What does that look like in our setting, whether we're a sports program or a STEM program or a choir program or some other arts program? And so what does that mean for you? So the evidence for this one might look like staff broke youth into small groups, and each group was instructed to design their own obstacle course. So here they are working in small groups that require active collaboration because they're going to be working together to create or design the obstacle course. Now, it could be that staff will be coming around and checking in on how things are going. Another way to encourage that active participation for all members is to assign some roles. So staff may say, decide who's going to be in charge of these different roles. And it could be any type of roles, but these examples, like someone to be able to make sure everyone has a chance to share ideas, someone who's going to write down the plan, someone who's willing to present the plan, and then adding in something that like everyone on that team is contributing ideas so that everyone feels like they have a part of that group. For establishing shared goals, the differences here you'll see underlined is that for a 3, it talks about some young people. So staff provide opportunities for some young people to work towards shared goals so that they have shared goals amongst the whole group. The 5 would be that all young people, whether it's individually or as groups, are working towards some shared goals. So again, there's examples here, but you have to think about what that looks like for your program. An example might be that staff said, the goal is, so if you hear that, you know that there's a goal, but the goal is for your group to create an obstacle design that includes a minimum of 3 obstacles, and each design has to include at least one mental challenge, like a riddle, a math problem, etc. And so now they have a goal to work towards that they're going to be measuring themselves against. The last one around group process opportunities. So here, for both the 3 and the 5, it's about all young people, all youth. This is that opportunity to talk amongst a group. And it's whether they have a limited opportunity, so maybe it only happens once during the session, or multiple and extended opportunities for that group process. So if youth are in their small groups and they're discussing the design elements, they have an opportunity. And so that's great. We know it's important for them to talk. Lots of times when you have young people in a group working on a project, they're going to have that group processing opportunity. And for more multiple or extended opportunities might look like that after each group is presented, staff asks the group how that they made the decisions as a group. So how did you work together? How did you decide on those elements? They may also ask the other groups what their favorite aspect of the presented course was. What obstacle seems like it would be most challenging. So creating that space for them to process and talk and share ideas is really what this item is about. This is only the example of one scale and 3 items, but once you know what kind of things to look for, and then have the conversation with your team about what would that look like for our program as you use it for planning, the same process would apply to any of those other scales. So next steps, where you are starting from and your interests will inform what next steps make sense for you. You can explore the tool more, decide if it would benefit you, your team, your program, or your OST network. If you're in Sprocket's network, reach out to find out more about how your organization connect with supports for the tool. If you aren't, visit the Weikart Center website. It's listed in the description to learn more. If you do want to start using the tool, whether it's new to your program or just new to you, identify what scales are important to you right now. Just focus on 2 or 3 scales. Trying to tackle the whole tool can be overwhelming. Start with what is a priority for your program now, and build skills connected with the scales. If you know where you have work to do, you don't need to start measuring to know that you don't have those elements yet, right? So use the tool to plan activities or visit the Sprockets YouTube playlist for some quick videos that can start your learning or learn with your team right away. Again, if you are one of our St. Paul Sprockets partners, reach out to learn how Sprockets can support you wherever you are ready to go next. So that's it, the SEL PQA overview. Thank you for your commitment to young people, and we will see you in the future for quick guide videos or trainings.